Hello, welcome to the Volteface Podcast. I'm Paul North, Director at Volteface, and I'm joined by...
I'm Katya Kowalski, Head of Operations at Volteface. Good to be here.
AKA
KK.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here. So we thought we'd do a podcast about a subject that we talk about loads, and pretty much every single person we ever speak to and meet in the industry talks about us loads.
Yeah, I think it's the one topic that's discussed at length within the medical cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That topic is...
Barriers, why the market hasn't taken off as much as it was expected to, what the kind of key teething problems still are since the legalization in 2018.
Yeah. Because everyone, we don't take the mick out of people, but we say frequently and joke with people that everyone looks at this issue and then explains it in a way which is more their business plan and less a bigger picture of what's actually going on.
Everyone kind of talks about what the key barrier in the industry is. There's always one key barrier for each person that's different for each group, and then they present their solution, which is their business plan.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah,
and it's often it is often a legit barrier. You're like that will actually help, but there is a bigger picture.
Yeah, and it's not just one barrier. I think if you solved one thing in the cannabis space, there'd be another 5 or 6 problems that emerge from that. So I think it's a complex topic with complex solutions, and there's not just one solution.
So we're just going to solve it in like an hour and a half chat and work it out. We've worked it out. But we're going to give it a go. It's going to be informal. We're going to be a light-hearted chat. We've got a lot to get through, but we really want to invite people to like get involved in the conversation as well. So we've got an industry section of the website now. We welcome comments, opinion pieces from people, whether you're in the industry, you're a patient, you work in the industry, you're outside the industry, whatever, anyone and everyone, as long as you've got something interesting and relevant to say, we welcome contributions to the website. We want people to get involved in the chat. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, we want to hear whether you agree with us, whether you disagree with us, whether you think there's 5 other barriers we haven't talked about. Just keen to hear your thoughts and spark a bit of discussion and debate.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right, with that being said then, let's...
No more waffling, we're going to get started.
No more waffling. Straight into action. And we're going to try not to slurp drinks into the microphone each other, which is what we're doing earlier.
But hopefully it won't be an ASMR podcast. That's not our intention whatsoever.
Welcome to All Good ASMR.
Serious business.
We're going to avoid that. So we've tried to think about this really logically, haven't we, in terms of the order by which we address and explore these different things.
Yeah, because I think there's, as we already said, people throw around loads of different barriers, and there are loads of different barriers. But I think it's important to look at it from like a systematic point of view, and almost like from point of entry and awareness of the market even existing through to like really complex, specific, and niche problems. So almost imagine this chat to be like a triangle.
Yeah, a triangle.
A triangle, yeah.
Oh, the hierarchy of needs.
Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like the bottom one being like the first major barrier, and as you get higher up, you're more specific and in within the industry.
Yeah.
And then the top one's like the... Yeah,
that does make the hierarchy needs thing.
That's how I see it in my head.
This is the triangle makes sense, and we're gonna present the problems and the barriers and the issues, and then we're gonna give some thought to like what some of the proposed solutions are. We don't want this to be some like doom and gloom, negative. Oh, look at all these things. It's not working.
We don't want to just outline all the issues within the industry, and people think, okay, well, there's no
cheers for that.
There's no hope for medical cannabis in the UK.
I listened to your 1.5 hour negative podcast about how nothing's working.
So we'll try and throw around some solutions and things that should or could be done.
Yeah, and hopefully some of them will spur debate. Hopefully some of them might even be controversial, and hopefully some of them lead to people coming together and having wider conversations about what we can do.
Yeah.
So should we start with the first one? What arguably is the largest, the most significant, and the one which everything else kind of hinges on?
I mean, I think the thing that hinges most on everything is the fact that people need to be aware that medical cannabis is in fact legal, and it has been for almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years. And so few people legitimately know that that's the case.
Yeah. I think because it's such a niche industry, we've got our like Google alerts set, and we're in the echo chamber of drug policy Twitter. We're so aware of all of these things happening, but to wider society and to the wider public, they just have no idea.
Absolutely no idea.
I mean, even thinking back to like the drug strategy and that white paper that came out a few months ago, like the average person has no idea. The average young person has no idea.
Absolutely no idea. And the specifics of that, they have very little idea about the specifics of what medical cannabis looks like, i.e. through private prescription. They think, so I had one person say to me about like, oh yeah, that, because they were talking about the work I was doing. Like, oh, it's really good. Oh yeah, because you can get CBD now, can't you? And I was like, well, I mean, you can't,
You
but
can,
like,
but
that's
very
nothing to do with the
different things.
campaigns
I
of
find that-
2018.
I find people are often aware that medical cannabis is legal, but they think it's, those children with epilepsy, now they can get medical cannabis. They don't really think that they can get it for loads of other conditions.
Yeah. So there's this huge issue. I mean, Medica did some polling, didn't? I'm so surprised this didn't get like major press.
Yeah,
because
because
it's super
wild. And
interesting.
It's
stuff.
exactly what we've been talking about as well, like doing polling to understand how many people
Yeah.
actually know that it's legal.
Anytime someone talks to me about Paul, I want to get some press. Like, what do you think some good polling is? I'm like, awareness is great poll. Like, do some awareness polling. But anyway, it's been done. 84% of the British public don't know it's legal, according to that polling. It was a decent sample size, which feels about right. It was maybe a bit higher than what I anticipated. I was thinking like sort of 70%.
Yeah, I thought it'd be like 75%, but 84 is.
I mean, that's such a ridiculous proportion of society that I have absolutely no idea that you can get medical cannabis on prescription.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it within my own friend group. All my friends are aware of what I do for work, but have absolutely no idea that medical cannabis is legal. And these are people that are like relatively cannabis aware, have consumed cannabis recreationally, and many of them would actually benefit from a prescription. Many of them are like self-medicating, but just have no idea. And when I tell them and explain them and show them these links to the clinics, they're taken aback. They're like, oh, it's legal.
We talked about this with a few people we've worked with, that like you can almost split the population into two at this stage. There is a significant number of people who are absolutely aware it is legal, and I would put them into kind of like long-term cannabis interested.
Yeah.
That have either
kind of legacy
history.
market,
Yeah.
Have a lot of experience and knowledge of the plant. And as soon as it went legal and these clinics
They were all
operated,
over it.
They were all over it. And
Straight
I think,
in,
I mean, we talk about this loads, but that initial part and segment of the market is captured.
Yeah.
They're aware.
Yeah, they're in.
They're on the Reddit channel. They're aware.
The dreaded Reddit. The hellhole of Reddit.
The cannabis gossip girl channel.
Yeah.
But
then there's another group. Then there's everybody.
Then there's
else,
everyone
right?
else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's more than it's more than just two groups. Yeah.
I nearly did that.
Move that. No ASMR. I think there's more than two groups. Then there's, I think, the kind of cannabis aware individuals that have smoked recreationally, know a bit about the plant. Would, if it was legal and everyone knew about it, they'd be all over it, but just don't know it's legal. And then there's obviously the people that would benefit medically, do not want to engage with the plant or don't know a whole lot about it, and there's still that kind of stigma and baggage attached to it.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because I thought in 2018, it's kind of depressing in a way. I thought that the headlines and all the chat about it, and I remember looking back in like 2019, thinking, man, that's a big moment. We're going to get a lot. This is going to go crazy now. Just like how could anybody not know? They've seen all these headlines, and how surely the information will spread like wildfire. But there is a serious. It didn't. But there is an important point to make that is and that is the restrictions of advertising that exist within the medical world are quite significant here. You can't run around doing radio adverts, TV adverts, making a big noise.
It's quite strict with that. And I think it goes back to that point that we always talk about, is no one actually reads the mainstream press anymore.
No.
So there were all these articles back in 2018 of, children with epilepsy being able to access medical cannabis going legal. You guys were in the midst of it. And so it felt like everyone knew, but a lot of people just don't read the newspaper.
People on Instagram, Facebook. People are scrolling on Facebook. Busy on
Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and so I think it goes to show that when you're not in that echo chamber, breaking out of it and seeing content that you're not completely conditioned to seeing is difficult.
And we see this as the biggest one, because even if let's imagine this is the only barrier, and beyond this point everything is absolutely perfect, everything is just incredible, you still it doesn't matter how good everything else is, you're still leaning on that initial factor of like not enough people are aware. And I think, again, it's worth saying that later down the line, if things were better, then awareness might spread more quickly, because there's definitely something around positive experiences spreading to other people. You know, someone finds out about medical cannabis, they try it, they use it for back pain, they let their partner know, who tells someone at work. You know, there is like a natural
there's
spread.
a natural progression. But I think when you, what is it? I think the latest estimate's like 20,000 patients, 17,000.
Well, I mean, there's loads of numbers.
I feel like no one actually
17-ish.
really knows.
I mean,
It's between like 10 and 20. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
That's still so small. Like it's
unbelievably small.
That's like the population of like a small to medium sized university.
Yeah, it's less people than go watch like, you know, great football teams like Leeds United every week.
Yeah, well, I was at All Points East the other week, and there was 40,000 people there.
There's too many hours at All Points East. There should not be 40,000 people in that space.
But there should be 40,000 medical cannabis patients.
There was more people using cannabis at that festival than are prescribed cannabis legally, I reckon.
Yeah.
I reckon
But
like
no, but like I'm just saying that's a lot of people, but like in the grand scheme of things, only half of them would be legally prescribed cannabis patients.
Definitely.
That's the entire cohort. So.
And I think a few people would debate on this. I think most people would look at this and be like, well, yeah, definitely awareness is a challenge. So what do we do about it then? Like, what are the clear solutions to that major issue of awareness?
Well, obviously raising awareness and spreading awareness. That seems like the obvious one, but
what does that look like though?
I mean, I think the issue is that to do like a massive PR stunt campaign, or, you know, having all the London buses saying, you know, medical cannabis is legal now, it costs a lot of money. And obviously we're at this kind of chicken and egg situation where we're trying to spread awareness about medical cannabis being legal in order to grow the market. But in order to grow it's like you need money to make money. It goes back to all of that. But yeah, I always wonder when I see like adverts on the London Tube or adverts on
talk
the
about
bus.
that one that's got in your mind recently. What was it?
Yeah, it's I've not been paid to say this.
This is a paid advertisement now. It's a change of pace.
I mean, I've never actually used it, but it's that expense management platform or software. I don't even know how it works. It's called Pleo.
But you've bought it.
I haven't bought it, but
downloaded it on your phone.
But it's pink. It looks pretty. I saw buses and ads for it for, I don't even know how long it was, maybe a month, and it's in my head. And now whenever you mention expenses, I'm like,
every day you talk about, every day you go on about it.
It looks pretty, but
I mean, that must have cost a fortune.
Yeah,
that
I
must
think
have
about
been
the
like
fact that
astronomically
this company's gotten into my mind. I don't even know what they do properly, and it's in my mind, and I just wonder how much money they spent in order to get it in my mind, and how many buses or tube adverts they had to buy for how long to be able to do that.
So I guess the observation we're making is we see lots of companies doing small pieces of marketing and awareness raising and like targeted interventions, which for sure will get in the minds of some people. But when the gap is so astronomical between the percentage of people that are aware and the percentage of people that aren't, it feels like a coordinated effort is needed. It feels like a combining of resource and money is needed to truly educate the UK. Otherwise, with marketing, you're just, if you've got small budgets, you're going to get small outcomes.
I mean, understandably, there's competition in the market, and I think any good market, competition is healthy and necessary. But I do think that there's a lot of fragmentation in the UK cannabis space, and everyone, is trying to do similar things naturally. But I think cooperation and collaboration is really necessary.
There's a theme, isn't there, for all these?
Yeah, there's a theme through all of them. We've got very similar answers for them all. But I do just think, and we say this all the time, there's only 17,000 patients. Like, grow the industry to 1 million, 2 million, and then fall out and be, divided and fragmented when there's enough.
Yeah, or even 150,000 or 200,000, but at 17,000.
Get more. So there's more pie and more cake for everyone, and then we can fight about it then. But there's just not enough patients to actually fight over.
So when the fighting does occur, it just is so disastrous because you're just eroding what is already a fractional market in the first place.
We'll go onto this next. I feel like it's difficult to divide all of them, but you're competing with the illicit market, so you need to satisfy patients and bring in enough patients that you don't
Definitely
just fall out.
We won't spend loads on this either because we don't want this to just turn into like a 3 hour and a half consultation with like Paul Moff and Katya Kowalski for everybody's viewing pleasure. But there are definitely like more innovative things that could be done to educate the public, and there's way too much of a focus on mainstream press instead of like, well, how do people...
No one reads the papers. No one actually subscribes to the Telegraph.
Well,
Not in my cohort.
We have to.
No.
I think you're being a bit too harsh. I think there are groups that would be that kind of like older cohort that are cannabis aware. I think.
Yeah, I think there's I think there's a lot of benefit in terms of like reducing stigma within those older kind of middle class, middle-aged populations. But yeah, targeting people that are in their mid-20s, they're not reading the Telegraph or the Times. They're consuming it through TikTok and Instagram.
We did want to like just do a little shout out to James.
Yeah.
From 4C Labs, who at the CIC meetings adamantly raises this point time after time about like we need coordinated efforts. So let's all put money.
Put in a bit of money into a big
which is fair play. That kind of like this isn't just about one company raising awareness. This is like an industry wide thing. I really respect and appreciate that kind of approach. So yeah, shout out to James, who has been saying this for since he got in the space really and kind of saw the lay of the land.
Yeah, and definitely agree with that approach. I mean, that's what we've just suggested.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, obviously we came up with it first.
But shout out anyway.
Shout out to James. So what's after that then? So that's the base level is like awareness, and then the next barrier seems to be around like the model and the actual policy. So it's the specifics of what is actually in place.
Yeah, what you can actually do and what you can prescribe cannabis for.
Yeah.
I think it's important to put in a disclaimer here that obviously we would benefit from wider recreational reform, more flexibility within the current medical model for cannabis. But I think we're talking about the kind of current model and policy. And
we want to be realistic.
Yeah, realistic.
We want to be practical.
Obviously, legalizing recreational cannabis tomorrow would benefit.
That would increase the market overnight.
Yeah.
Instantly. But we're talking about things
that can be feasibly done and not require a significant amount of intervention and kind of government.
We should do another podcast about this. We just do another one straight after. But like there is definitely a lot we have to say about like political intervention and engagement in the current climate that exists. Like there's only so much you can do with current politicians, and there's only so much faith you can have with them. Yeah. And there are other levers.
And only so much interest in cannabis.
Yeah. But we're not going to talk about
that. It's too much to discuss.
Yeah. So what do you think the like biggest barriers are with model and policy? Me and you discuss a lot about the kind of like you've got to have tried 2 other medications and have evidence of trying those 2 medications.
Yeah.
As kind of because you've referred people, and you've like had your mates that are like,
I keep telling.
There's a clinic, go off you go, and they're like they get knocked back.
It's my favorite pastime being at house parties and just telling people, you can actually get cannabis legally. I'm like, what? So just
That's
and
like your
new
party
referrals.
Trick. That's your party trick. Did you know that you can get? And they're like, whoa.
I should start charging commission to all the clinics. But yeah, I mean, obviously, a massive barrier is people not being aware of cannabis being legal, and then there's other systemic barriers around like cost. But if you strip those away, if you've got a cohort of people that are aware that cannabis is legal, want it on prescription, and price isn't an issue, they're willing to pay what the consultation fees are. I think another barrier is you've got people that would definitely benefit from using cannabis for therapeutic and medical reasons, but they just can't get it prescribed because they've either got a condition but don't necessarily have a diagnosis, but they've got they're suspected to have ADHD, and they know that from self-medication. And I've just lost my train of thought.
Why were you looking at me when you said that?
No. I feel like you've given me ADHD.
You're like people who've got ADHD. I've given you ADHD, cow.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not contagious.
I've developed it over 2 years with us. People that would obviously benefit from medical cannabis, but just, have never actually been prescribed anything, and, don't necessarily want to be prescribed, hardcore pharmaceutical drugs just to find out that it doesn't work. And
because that's a clunky process, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like, there's things that, I would be able to use medical cannabis, like it would benefit me in a number of ways, but I don't want to then now go to another GP and try like multiple medications
just to kind of
just to then create a relevance for me to go back to try medical cannabis. So,
yeah, and I think this also goes back to we'll go on to this at the end, but stigma feeds into each of these barriers.
Totally,
and I think there's definitely a stigma within medical establishments in this policy in the first place around, cannabis is kind of, it's seen as more of a last resort, and you have to have exhausted these other avenues to even be considered to be put on a prescription. Because I've had friends that have, tried to get cannabis prescribed. They'd definitely benefit, but because they haven't tried to like treatments or therapies, it's just not a factor. Cost, I think I don't think is a huge barrier anymore. I think cost initially was like pretty astronomical, but now I think is more reasonable if you're taking it as medication. And I know people will be upset by that because it's still not cheapest medication. People do have very, very expensive. Yeah, and I think it depends, and it's on a scale because you've got
it depends on how much you're using.
Yeah, it depends on the dosing, the concentration, the mode of administration. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I know that prescriptions do range from different prices.
Oh, there is a variation, but I don't feel like it's the cost now that is a huge barrier. I don't hear a great deal of people that are like, I'm priced out, so won't engage with it. In fact, that's not true. That's not true. I take that back. There are definitely Reddit posts that I read where people are literally saying those exact words. So I am aware that is the case. Yeah. I just don't think it is a big enough barrier to be a huge structural problem. Do you know what I mean? And also, like on that point, I think we talked about like competition and the relevance of competition, but I think and how like it would be good if there was more like synergy between the different groups that exist to cooperate and expand the market collaboratively rather than fighting over a small number. I also think from like an investment and profit perspective, it would be good if, and this does exist to some extent because there are schemes and programs that clinics are doing that do reduce costs and provide access at like £5-10 a gram. But I think patients should be at the forefront of all this stuff. So like, it is absolutely imperative that the market can meet the needs of patients in terms of cost so that the market can actually grow and flourish and have like a baseline number of patients. So if patients are giving feedback, they're like, I'm priced out now, I can't afford my medication, then that's a wake-up call for the industry, I think, to be like, okay, well, maybe we're going to have to knock back our projections, financial projections for a bit until we can meet that need. So I don't mean to disregard the cost there for patients. I know it can be significant.
Yeah. And cost has reduced, like over the last 4 years it has.
It's definitely
gone
got
down,
better, yeah.
And it's one of those things that, as the market does expand, it will continue to go down and be cheaper.
Yeah. It's still like £5-10 a gram ish on average at the moment, although obviously some strains will stretch a bit beyond that.
Yeah. And I guess it also it's like we went back to this point before around there being kind of two groups: the people that are cannabis aware that have used cannabis previously, kind of self-medication, and they're kind of part of that legacy market, and then you've got the people that do not use cannabis and don't really know much about it. So I think almost for that cohort that doesn't know much about cannabis and is used to being just prescribed medications on the NHS, that cost barrier might be more significant.
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Whereas people that have used the legacy market or illicit market, whatever you want to call it, are kind of, I guess, used to paying a certain amount of money for their cannabis. I don't know. I'm happy to be.
We're happy to be shouted at.
Yeah, please disagree with me.
By everyone on Twitter. That's our favourite way of interaction, isn't it? People angrily shouting at us on Twitter, I think is.
Then I'm like, I've got 200 characters to respond to you. Let's just have a more nuanced conversation. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that wasn't very eloquently put, but I feel like maybe the people that are already engaged and kind of in the space and in the sector would find that barrier of cost less significant because they're used to consuming and purchasing cannabis.
Yeah, I think they're all fair points. And if they're not fair points, people can say otherwise, and we respect and appreciate people's opinions. We welcome challenge. Yeah. It's all fine. Everybody's happy. What about we won't say loads and loads on this because we have a pending report that's coming out that talks about this in more detail, so we don't want to do spoilers. But the clinic model is obviously quite unique.
Yeah.
In that we don't treat any other medicine in the same way as we do cannabis.
Yeah, I think it's quite uncommon to have a single drug clinic. Like we were talking about this the other day, and I've got it in my notes around. It'd be quite strange to see like a benzodiazepine clinic or
the benzo clinic.
Go to your opioid clinic.
Yeah.
So I think the cannabis clinic model is, I think that there are some issues with that as a model, and I think that the clinics are aware of that as well. I don't think that's
and fair play to clinics. Like I'm pro clinic. We're pro clinic, but it's worth noting that is an unusual approach to prescribing.
Yeah, because you have to. I mean, going there as a patient, you've kind of decided that you want to be prescribed cannabis. Where I think the UK model of healthcare is quite different to the US, where in the US, you kind of go to your doctor saying, I want to try out this medication, and they give it to you. Whereas in the UK,
this is a problem. Sorry to interrupt. There's like a sociological problem around I've talked about this before on loads of things, about the way in which we view medicine. And in the States, the very libertarian style of engagement with doctors, where they're like, I want that, give me that medicine, I've seen it on an advert.
Yeah.
I want that one, it's my body, my healthcare, I want to try that. And the doctors are like, sure, I'm on commission. Tried 5. They're very relaxed. Like Dope Sick is a real eye opener into that. Like,
I still need to watch that.
It's great. Everyone should watch Dope Sick. Like the wildness of the American model. Whereas here in the UK, with our health, we put so much faith and emphasis on the NHS.
Yeah.
And kind of like, well, if I get sick and feeling well, I'll go see a GP and they'll just handhold me through it.
He'll tell me what.
Or she.
Sorry.
There we go.
They'll tell me what I should take. But yeah, I mean, that goes back to the awareness thing around the kind of, the restrictions around advertising and actually promoting it. So, I think that's a massive barrier. And like your choice to go to a cannabis clinic in the first place, you have to be aware of the fact that the cannabis clinic even exists.
Yeah.
And you're not just relying on people going to their doctors with chronic pain and whatnot, and being given an option and suggestion of, maybe medical cannabis would help. So I think that's a really significant barrier.
On this one, maybe we don't go too heavy in the solutions because we literally have a report coming out very soon on this exact subject.
So stay tuned. Maybe we'll do another podcast when the report comes out.
Sure, we can do another podcast.
Loads of podcast ideas.
Detail, but with model and policy, there's still some kind of clunky parts of it.
Yeah, I think there should definitely. We talked about this around like flexibility around that 2 medication policy, and maybe some kind of trial period where someone can, try out medical cannabis for a couple of weeks, see if it's of benefit, and then be put on more permanently for like a permanent prescription. I don't think it's necessarily fair for people to have had to go through agony trying 2 medications that they know that won't work, or they don't want to be put on opioids or whatnot. So
this is probably completely illegal, but I'm going to suggest it anyway. Well, it's not illegal for me to suggest it, but it's probably illegal. It would also be good. Let's say someone goes and I really struggle sleeping, I have sleep issues. I've heard cannabis can help with this, and the doctor goes, there's some interesting evidence around sleep. Have you tried 2 other medications for sleep? I go, no, absolutely not. I'm just coming to you now because I've realised it's a problem I heard about cannabis. It would be good if there was kind of like, okay, well, here's like a quick route guy. You know what I mean? Here are 2 medications you can very quickly try that aren't very, that they're not opiate. They're not going to kind of have any like long-term impact or damage to your body. You can try them and report back whether it works.
Something the clinics can try.
Yeah, just, do you know what I mean? Almost like a fast track. Like, well, let's just get these 2.
Disclaimer, Paul is not in fact a medical professional.
And I shouldn't be listening to it. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, don't you? Like a fast track type thing.
Yeah.
Not like try these medications while I wink,
Yeah, it's like, try, these like low grade painkillers. And I guess the second thing is just around kind of normalizing prescribing outside of the clinics.
Yeah.
And just, it goes back to the whole awareness raising and bringing cannabis just more into the mainstream, keeping it less of a kind of a fringe issue.
Stop saying cannabis.
Cannabis.
Not you.
Sorry.
Imagine me goes, why have you said cannabis again? That is a thing. We talked about this a lot, how that's become our phrase. We've talked about this. It's because all we do is talk about this, I think.
We do just talk about cannabis all day, every day. It's our job.
Here's our job. Not saying cannabis when talking about cannabis is great.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stigma attached to the word and so much resistance attached to the word that if you are having conversations around cannabis as a medicine and you're not throwing the word cannabis around everywhere, I think that is really, really, really helpful and really useful.
Yeah. Well, I think in drug reform in general, I think drug policy advocates fall into the same trap as prohibitionists around everyone makes it too much of a thing around the drug and doesn't talk about everything else that surrounds the drug. Those are the issues. Don't stop making it about the drug. It's not drug policy, it's everything else.
Yeah. There are some like cannabis purists out there who are like, no, we got to beat this stigma and use the word cannabis, and like, Which I get the drive for that. I get it shouldn't be a stigmatized word. It's it's a drug that's been around for like ever, that we've used for ages. It's not exactly this new menace. But at the same time, like, I'm really interested in seeing change.
Yeah, and we also don't live in an ideal, perfect society. Like, there's loads of things
Absolutely
I'd love
not.
to see in society, but we're just not going to see them.
Not all.
So, yeah. Well, I feel like we've...
That's model and policy is the second one. So the first one, we had the general awareness. That's the big one.
Awareness.
Then
Model and policies. Like, imagining...
We're building the triangle.
Building the triangle. Maybe I'll like draw out a triangle and we can have it in the corner.
You should definitely draw a triangle and put it in the corner. Next one is...
Yeah, I feel like the next one, I feel like there can be dispute around what goes next, but I think it's probably the number of prescribing clinicians. And that being like in my head around so let's say the model and policy is fine, there's more flexibility around who can be prescribed, and 100% of the British public is aware of it, or like, much, much higher than 84% not being aware. Even if the British public were aware that cannabis was legal and can get it on prescription, the amount of doctors that are actually prescribing would hinder and slow down the process of people being able to be prescribed the medication, because you've got, I think it's around like 100 prescribing clinicians, because obviously only specialist clinicians can prescribe. We didn't mention that in the model and policy either, but that's fine. So yeah, even if 1 million people knew, going from a sample size of 17,000 to 1 million overnight or over a few weeks, there would just be too much demand and not enough doctors and consultations to go around to even prescribe safely and appropriately.
Well, I think it's fine to mention that within this one rather than the model, because Mike Barnes talks about this a lot, that like, and Hannah, that we need GPs to prescribe. We need more access points, but the path to GPs prescribing is way more complicated than people think it should be.
Yeah, it would involve another kind of policy change.
Yeah. And technically they can't, I don't know what, no, in fact, I'm not even going to start professing clinical knowledge when I don't.
What were you going to say?
No, I've just worked with GPs when I worked in drug treatment who were like, well, technically we can prescribe anything and this, that and the other. I'm like, well, I think they have to do it like off license though. And it's not
I think
insured.
they have to be referred or like given the okay from a specialist clinician. Like, I think after being prescribed through a specialist prescriber, they can pass on your like prescription to the GP. I think, yeah. I think, but this is a conversation. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a conversation. We're getting sued.
Yeah, we're gonna get cancelled.
But the I mean, it would obviously, there are some like is it Jersey or Guernsey where GPs can prescribe, or is it both? Jersey and Guernsey.
Definitely Jersey. I think Guernsey as well. But that's, I mean, there's like the same number of patients, if not more, in Jersey.
Yeah, alone.
And there's, I think it's like a population of 100,000, which is about the population of the city of Bath.
Yeah.
So yeah, like when you compare that, it's
a different situation.
Yeah, it's completely different, and they've got the same number of patients, if not more. So, yeah.
So yeah, more clinicians would obviously be helped. Less than 1% at the moment.
Yeah, prescribe. And I feel like that's easier said than done, because I think the clinicians wanting to prescribe cannabis, that's a massive barrier. I mean, once you get past the hurdle of people actually knowing it's legal, someone actually being willing to prescribe it to you is a significant one. Yeah, definitely.
And again, we've got a report coming out on this very soon that spoke to many clinicians and asked them, why don't you prescribe? What are your perceptions around prescribing?
Yes, lots of experience with that.
You've spent so much of your recent work life speaking to clinicians.
Yeah, I have. I've got lots of thoughts and feelings about it.
So stay tuned for the report. But there are a number of things we can kind of do in this area, and there is some good work being done.
Yeah,
in
definitely.
This area, there's some really good education.
Yeah, I think it would be unfair to say that doctors aren't being educated and given awareness raising, and I think the sentiment is definitely changing, and I think doctors are interested in it as they should be as well, because I think as a clinician you're meant to continue to be interested in new and innovative medications and treatments. But I mean, I think we'll go on to this in a bit more detail, but cannabis is complicated and it's unique, and it doesn't fit into that kind of mainstream classic healthcare model. And it can, and I think that's why, we talk about, the need to stop saying the word cannabis, because I think that kind of takes away and almost makes cannabis seem too scary and complex for people to want to engage with it. I think the simpler you make it, the more likely they are to kind of be willing to prescribe it. And it all goes back to evidence as well.
Yeah, it does. It does in the clinical space, doesn't it? It all goes back to evidence.
Yeah, and then it goes back to money, because RCTs are incredibly expensive to run.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and on the clinician point, the number of prescribing clinicians and stigma, that's why me and you are really interested in like innovations around prescribing. So the kind of like advancement of cannabis as a medicine is of massive interest to us, isn't it? Like it being consumed and used in a way which we absolutely wouldn't ever associate or even think of as cannabis.
It's that separation from recreational as well.
Yeah.
And obviously we're advocates for the cause both recreationally and medically, but I think for both markets to flourish, there is a need to separate them out. I think as the lines get more blurred around whether it's being consumed for recreational purposes or medical, that's where it becomes.
And it's only hope. The only hope medical has got versus recreational is to differentiate itself from what recreational looks like.
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of people get very triggered and upset and very shouty online about recreational, like very anti-rec and pro-medical, and point, very fairly to Canadian markets and American markets that have been eroded by recreational. We've got these medical markets patients, and then rec comes along. It's just like, it just absorbs and takes the whole thing. A lot of medical patients go over to recreational. I don't think that's a great situation. I don't think that's good. I think it's better to have recreational and medical than just medical.
Yeah.
Because I think you see less harm as a society. But it's not great if recreational comes flying in and destroys medical. So I think that those like innovations of technologies and advancement of cannabis into, oils is the most basic of those innovations, isn't it? Although cannabis oil's been around for like ages.
Yeah, or like, vaporizers, metered dosing, pill, get that magic white pill, and any doctor will
and don't call it
it.
cannabis. Don't call it cannabis. And it makes it way easy to get clinicians on board and engaged, and the broader population to engage with it as a medical drug. You make a good point around the research though. Like this thing happens in government, doesn't it? Where am I too loud, by the way? Is it okay?
No, you're fine. Yeah, am I too quiet or?
No, you're fine. It's like a random sound check. Time out, sound check.
Halfway through.
Yeah, 36 minutes in. Oh, best check the sound. We know what we're doing. In government at the moment, the Labour are at loggerheads with Tories over the issue of medical cannabis, because Labour will say that it's the Tories being cruel, they need to broaden access, they need to just let GPs prescribe, they need to lift restrictions on research through NICE and push NICE to just let medical cannabis through, and strong advocates for it to go on the NHS. Whereas the Tories are like, we don't want to change the current medical framework and system, go get the research. Fund the research, do the trials. Like we're here and looking for the research.
I think it's a fundamental issue around the way in which cannabis was legalized in the first place. I mean, it was an incredible campaign, an incredible.
Dirty day criticizing.
I'm not criticizing it, but it was quite a unique way in regards to seeing something changed and legalized. It was almost like the policy framework was ahead of its time for the medical research and advancement, because politicians legalized it basically overnight due to the media pinning them into a corner, and it was the right thing to do. But clinicians were like, well, we don't have the research and the understanding of the plan, so it kind of just came out of nowhere. And then 4 years later, you've still got all this education and awareness raising amongst clinicians to actually understand what the plant's about. So I think that's a significant barrier in clinicians feeling comfortable and confident in it, because I think in general clinicians are a bit hesitant around the media and politics in general. It's not really it's kind of like a foreign world to them. So I think because of that, kind of it almost taints the view of the potential of medical cannabis for that reason. So
and politicians don't like getting engaged in clinical things. Like
they don't understand it.
It's just such a rocky area that they stay fairly at arm's length. Like the thought of the government intervening on NICE guidance, it feels like a stretch. Like I just can't ever see them.
Yeah, and I think NICE would lose their.
Yeah, there would be a lot of clinical outrage if they like.
Shit, pardon my French.
You have to edit that out, Katya. So yeah,
we mentioned cannabis enough. I think it's fine.
So that was the number of prescribing clinicians.
Yeah.
I feel like we've kind of talked about that
Yeah, and I think the next moving on to the next strip of the triangle.
Next strip. And this is like illicit market competition.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much to break down here.
This one's chunky. So we've got like awareness.
I feel like there's so many barriers within this, but
we'll give it a go. Let me just revisit. We've got awareness, then we've got the model and the policy structural issues, then we've got the number of prescribing clinicians. We didn't give. I guess our solutions in that are kind of like, well, wait for our report to come out because it talks about it absolutely extensively.
Provides loads of solutions in there.
But like, there is some really good work going on. There's a Clinician Society which should do it. Well, there's a bunch. There's like 2 or 3 really good organisations doing really good awareness raising with doctors and engaging doctors. So there is momentum that I feel like that one.
I think it's about just starting to speak the language more, like bringing cannabis more into the kind of healthcare system and things that doctors are used to, rather than trying to change the healthcare system for cannabis. Doing it the other way around.
Agree.
But I think now we're getting to the point in the discussion where it's like, okay, people know that it's legal. The model and the policy framework is more lenient and flexible. Doctors are willing to prescribe. I think this barrier is all about how good is the current market and good approach. How well does the current market cater to patients and customers, essentially?
Yeah. And I'm always really interested in like illicit market competition because I have a strong interest in observing and seeing how recreational markets do versus illicit markets, and the criticisms of regulation and recreational legalization is often more of like an economic argument around what sensible regulation looks like rather than whether they're against the idea of it being legalized. So I mean, the debate and discussion now is like, well, what does regulation actually look like? But good regulation defeats the illicit criminal market. That's the point of legalization and regulation, is to be like, okay.
And you've still obviously got like old school prohibitionists that are like, no, cannabis shouldn't be legal. But like people are very much warming and kind of warm to the idea of legalization. But we've definitely moved into this next stage of like, okay, so what does that look like, and how can we practically get rid of the illicit market?
And this is what Germany are debating. This is what Germany are thinking about on a recreational level. But we're obviously focused
on medical,
but it's really difficult. It's really, really, really difficult to defeat an illicit market. They have like no regulation whatsoever. It's the freest of free markets. It can change its prices in a day. It can do anything. It
does anything.
And it does anything. Yeah. So there are a bunch here that we wanted to go through.
And I think and I feel like we'll probably be quite critical here, but I think it's worth saying that there's obviously so many barriers within the current system in the UK that we're not just slating the medical cannabis industry in the UK, because they are definitely doing what they can do in the current framework. But there's obviously issues.
Because we talked about pricing previously. We talked about pricing in the previous point, but it's still difficult to compete with a market that can adjust its prices based on yours. So let's say someone is procuring cannabis illicitly in the clinic, it's suddenly got more expensive. Like, it's easy if someone's got like a relationship with a dealer for them to just constantly undercut whatever the clinic is doing it.
Or, getting like bundle deals or whatever. And often within the illicit market as well, if you're a patient, you're self-medicating, you've been consuming cannabis for years, you've probably got a good relationship with your dealer. And will give you good deals and discounts based on all of that. So prices, you're competing with a market that has no regulation around what they need to charge.
Yeah. And there's obviously a comment around like quality as well. We've got a really, really good article that's coming out. Maybe it'll be out by the time this podcast comes out, actually.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe not. Or on like, I always struggle to say this word with my like whatever I want to call it, dyslexia, verbal dyslexia, but like irradiated.
Irradiated and non-irradiated cannabis. And the quality around that.
Yeah, because there's all sorts of weird and wonderful debates going on online. But aside from, that's one debate. Check out the article.
Yeah.
But there has been complaints and issues around quality since the beginning of the market being launched that we've seen online.
There's lots of conspiracy theories as to why that is as well.
There's all sorts of weird and wonderful conspiracy theories in there.
But I think quality also feeds into the fact that there's no UK grown cannabis, so it's all imported, which makes the quality go down because it's to go through all these processes being exported in the first place. And and it makes it more expensive.
And supplies,
And,
it takes longer.
Yeah, and the supply chains it's quite, cut up and disjointed. So, quality becomes an issue with that. And like we said, with that kind of cohort of 17,000 patients or whatever the number is, the market kind of initially captured those individuals that are, have a lot of experience and expertise and knowledge of the cannabis plant, moving from a legacy illicit market to a legal one. These are people that have a great deal of experience and knowledge around, the quality of cannabis. So if you're not satisfying the patient and the customer with good quality cannabis, they'll just move back to the illicit market.
The bit I'll try and make a controversial point here that'll definitely upset people. But the bit that I think is interesting around quality is when it is more about what the weed looks like or smells like rather than the actual effect it has on the medical condition. I find that interesting. Because that's where I think you see this kind of blurring of what medical and recreational is.
I was about to say, I think that
do you know what I mean? Because there's kind of like a connoisseur element with cannabis to recreational. People like to see a flower look in a particular way. And I know those attributes often correlate to experience and outcome. But I find it interesting that there's not many medicines that you would get.
They should do like a blind test.
Yeah.
Like blindfold.
Yeah, and just try it. And
try
be like,
it.
Did it help with the condition? Did it help with the reasons as to why you prescribed and used that drug rather than what it looked like?
Yeah.
But then there is a grey. I mean, it's an elephant in the room sometimes. I'm not afraid to say it, that there is definitely a grey area between medical and recreational.
Yeah.
There's definitely a blurring of the lines. And,
I think
there's a great debate to be had there.
And because it's a psychoactive substance, it influences the way you think and feel and all of this, behave. And it, provides pain relief. If you're someone that is chronically ill in a significant amount of pain and you consume a drug that provides pain relief, that obviously in turn provides enjoyment and pleasure. So, and I don't know what the definition of a recreational drug is from the Oxford Dictionary, but definitely pleasure and enjoyment is part of a recreational drug experience. That's why people take drugs, because it's an enjoyable experience. So I think within that, obviously a medicine is to treat a specific condition and provide pain relief. But you've got those two things, and that's why we see so much drug use and abuse occurring from prescribed medications, because through that pain relief, there's enjoyment and a psychoactive experience.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the most widely and problematically used drugs ever of opiates, which absolutely have really strong medical use and evidence around the world, but
are also
massively abused
recreationally.
Massively abused recreationally. So there is a huge blurring of that, and I'm not against that blurring in many ways. I think if people use something and they feel what they would define as a medical benefit, then they have absolutely every right to do so, and other people shouldn't have any say or control over that. And I don't think it's a bad thing in any way. I'm just making the observation that it's interesting that sometimes those conversations or comments are more about what it looks like or smells like rather than focused on the effect. There's a lot of posts on the Reddit from that are like, I didn't like it looked and this, but it works okay.
Yeah. I also think that it's just funny, some of the names of the strains.
It is quite funny.
We've got like Stardug Kush and Green Gelato and
Gorilla Glue.
It just, I do just think
it's a better name than like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oxycontin.
Strain 1, 2, 3, 4. But I do just think it's quite funny because
they're just like recreational. It's just like recreational strains.
It doesn't sound like a medical strain. So that might be another reason why doctors are not a lot. But
it's a totally valid point, because you can imagine like a hesitant doctor being like okay, fine, I'm going to come in, and what am I prescribing? Gorilla Glue. Gorilla Glue. It's like green gelato. It's kind of like, oh, okay, that's the name
medicine?
of the.
So I think. Yeah, talk less about cannabis.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the practicality changed the names, because they're all like based on the original strains out.
Aren't they like all like trademarked?
People have like IPs over the seeds and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so that's fine.
But it would help if it's possible to change the name. That probably would be a good thing.
Own an IP, maybe consider changing it for medical purposes.
Yeah, just the stuff that you bring over here for a medical market. Maybe just at some point make it sound a little bit more medical. So there are definitely challenges in this area out there, and I think, again, we really welcome comments and feedback and ideas, and we're just recognizing that we're exploring this from our lens, and there'll be so many other
it's just a
ideas and perspectives, but there's definitely tension there around the clinical.
And obviously, like distribution, the speed of delivery. I think that's another thing with black market competition. If you're dealer can deliver cannabis to you within 20 minutes compared to long delays from the pharmacy.
Which are always the case. I don't want to bash the clinics too much.
No,
Because they're working really hard. Like again, they're really good people working really hard to like help people deal with pain. And I think we are strong advocates. People should explore a clinical model. Yeah. Like the criminal, like we're obviously against the mass criminalization of people that use drugs medically and recreationally. Like we're absolutely against that and sympathise with anybody who's gone through that system. It's not cool. It's not fair. We don't support it. We think people should try and get it legally, medically, if they can. But then at the same time,
that furthers the cause. Then we're moving to a regulated medical framework that isn't illicit.
But at the same time, I think it's also fine for us to recognise that if we had more, like if the government could just get a bit more proactive in granting licences, that would be a start.
I think
there's
a lot
so
of
many pending licences, people trying to get licences to cultivate and grow, and it's just not going through. That's a problem. That's you know what I mean. Like, and we could do the whole thing that everyone talks about all the time. We're the biggest exporter of cannabis in the world, and we don't. It's a bit mad. It remains crazy that we grow and export.
Even CBD. Like we don't grow any CBD in the UK.
It's wild.
It's a massive, industry. It's like
it's completely wild.
Make Britain great again.
So we talked about pricing and quality, distribution. Should we talk about mold? Is that too controversial?
Mold.
Well, there's the odd mold thing. I mean, how much
bugs? This
goes back to the cannabis wars thing that we've skirted around.
The canna wars.
I'm super skeptical of some of those posts that go on Reddit around mold. I'm sorry, but some of those pictures you can absolutely reverse image search and find.
Yeah. Also, some of them are like. Someone has to have like a microscope of a camera.
Yeah, what is?
Because some of them are very
Hubble
detailed.
telescopes.
Like I'd love for my camera to be that high vis.
Ain't no iPhone.
Yeah. So it's like some kind of like cannabis laboratory.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not brushing that aside completely. I'm absolutely not saying that there hasn't ever been any mold on cannabis, and just it seems some of the things have felt fairly strange. But also it is another elephant in the room, isn't it? That like it is for a medically prescribed product in the UK that is quite unusual. It just puts cannabis in this like other category of medicine that you wouldn't really get with anything else. It doesn't really help. But and again, we know that there are loads of people working really hard to try and address those things and like improve quality and speed of supply, and it's definitely getting better. But at the same time, you're back competing with that illicit market, which makes it really challenging. UK cultivation would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that would solve a lot of the issues around putting the price down because they don't have to import it in the first place. Quality goes up because it doesn't have to have those delays, and then distribution's also easier. So I think I feel like that would solve a lot of things. I'm aware that we're just saying this sat here in these comfy chairs, and I think there's a lot of work to be done around that, but that would help.
A more coordinated effort to engage government on this would help as well. I think this might be an interesting point to bring in the fragmented nature of the industry.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be very blunt about it, and it might upset some people, but
that's fine.
It's fine. I've never known such a fragment. I used to work in obviously treatment services for many years, and that was tense. You would have people with like competing interests and opinions, and you would get like divisions and tension, but it would never hinder people working together or like sitting around the table engaging with each other. The fractious nature of the cannabis industry, was that you on motorbike? What was that? No,
it must have been outside. I heard that too.
It was you growling. It's like a KK growl. The like fractious nature of the industry is a huge problem. Yeah. You have competing industry groups in like basically opposite ends of the room.
I find everyone's trying to do very similar things, and it's like, well, let's just not all try and do the same thing and actually work together so that we see change. It goes back to, we talked about this at the very beginning around awareness and coming together as a unified effort to do like a massive media campaign, tube advert campaign. I think it's similar with engaging government because everyone's, trying to engage them kind of privately and secretly through their own means, but doing it all together, and then everyone can benefit.
Yeah, because there are multiple trade groups, industry bodies that have good ideas and good people, and it just is. I think it is frustrating to see. It's just frustrating to see that tension when everyone at their core is trying to do something good and change you know.
And at their core, I mean, I think we're a lot more similar than we are different within this space. Everyone we speak to, it's like, okay, I feel like we've all got more in common with each other than we do have not in common.
Yeah. It's difficult though, isn't it? Like even as I say that, I kind of recognise, I don't want to start like naming names and getting too controversial, but you know, it is also difficult when you get a lot of people in the room.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like because the cannabis industry is very young and it's not huge compared to other industries, but it's fairly diverse in terms of people that you get in a room, and it's really difficult.
Super interdisciplinary.
Yeah, it's really difficult to manage everyone's like expectation and ideas and move things forward. But it would be amazing at a more senior level, at company level, investment level, trade body level, if there was more of like a coordinated approach to do things together, even if it didn't mean mass growth for individual companies. If it was like, it would be just lovely to get all the right people around the table and say, we have a huge issue here. Not enough people know about medical cannabis. And until we address this issue, none of us are going to make a single penny that's worth talking about. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're going to run at losses year on year on year until we can get into the 100,000, 200,000 number of patients.
Yeah.
Let's coordinate a sensible marketing campaign. Let's coordinate sensible engagement with government around changing the model. Let's coordinate sensible education with prescribing clinicians. Let's coordinate appropriate pricing. The pricing wars that go on in the clinics is ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous.
Or like don't they do
consultation wars?
Yeah, or discounts if you switch from one clinic to the
Ridiculous.
other. Like,
Why
stop
are you doing
fighting
that? Why
over
are you doing that?
70,000 patients. Stop
You
fighting
are
with them.
literally just making it worse for patients. Work together. Set your prices at a reasonable rate for patients that patients can afford. Set them at an agreed rate with each other that you can all afford, and grow the market together rather than trying to undercut and snide patients off each other. You've only got 70,000 patients.
There's really not that many to follow.
Sorry, we're getting annoyed now. We also really like, we've also really admire all the hard work that's going on, and like, it's so easy for us to sit here and be like, do all this and do that and do the other. But it's the like advocate in me that gets annoyed when I see that kind of like, that stuff playing out. Because, you see the fallout online, you see patients talking about it. Oh, I'm going to go to this clinic now, they're doing this, and they've dropped the fee to that. Anyway, it's just like whack-a-mole. So that would be good. Like I think our general theme is, it would be really good if we recognise that we're not selling computers, we're not selling podcast studios and technological equipment. We're selling
Cannabis.
and working in a business in which if we fail, people end up in jail and people end up in a lot of pain.
Yeah, it's a socially controversial, contentious topic, politically controversial. It's very different to other industries.
Yeah, it's super unique.
You need a unique, sensible approach.
Yeah. But while it's not working, people are getting hurt. That's the bit why I can feel myself getting wound up about it now, just chatting about it. Because if this was just like, we're selling computers and, my computer's better than your computer, it's fine. I'm not really bothered about people enjoying themselves a little bit more. But I'm bothered about people being in pain.
Yeah.
I'm bothered about people being criminalised. I'm bothered about people dying through having seizures and fits, which could be prevented by cannabis-based medicines.
Yeah.
So it would
We're
be
using
amazing.
medication that's, dangerous compared to cannabis.
Absolutely. So it would be amazing if everyone can just look at each other in the room and be like, oh yeah, there are only 17,000 of these people. Should we stop doing the clinic
There could be
wars?
more people benefiting from these.
Let's all work together and increase the number. And when it gets to 150, go wild. Go wild. Do you know what I mean? Do your consultation wars. Go absolutely crazy. But until then, come on. Sorry, no one's going to want to speak to me. But it's coming from a good place.
Yeah, no, and I think most people, everyone would probably agree with you on that point. We'd all mutually benefit from having more patients. There'd be more work
Big
to
time.
go around, more patients. Yeah, just more. We can grow the industry more.
Absolutely.
To a very stagnant part of the medical cannabis industry.
It just does. I'm going to say it. I'm sorry. It just doesn't help that you have two big industry groups and there's a massive split between some of the key players that exist in those two groups. It's just a ridiculous situation that you have Centre for Medical Cannabis and the Cannabis Industry Council, and you have the group split across the two, both doing separate things and lobbying things. And I like them all. I have time for everyone.
Yeah.
I don't have issue with anyone in any of those things.
Yeah.
But it frustrates me that it frustrates me that we're even in that position. We've only got 70,000 patients. How are we big enough for multiple
Trade
groups
bodies.
to be doing different things?
Yeah, well, very similar things in many ways, but just separately. Similar things,
Yeah.
but separately. So just bring it all under one wing and do them
It's
together.
easier said than done, though.
Yeah, it's easier said than
I'll
done.
arrange a meeting tomorrow. I'll email everyone.
Our inbox will be flooded when we publish this.
We appreciate that it's ways we're in a privileged position being able to sit here. We're inside the industry, but we're outside in some ways. Like, we can observe it and say all these things. We appreciate that, but it's coming from a place where we're seeing people suffer.
Yeah.
And it's 4 years on,
and
we've got 70,000 patients.
Yeah, but equally, we welcome discussion and engagement on this. Like, if you've
Big time.
Yeah, speak to us about this stuff if you've got something to say.
Yeah, 100%.
If you agree.
We're always up for good ideas out with Katya.
Yeah, all good ideas and points.
Does that address illicit market competition?
I think so. I kind of forgot which barrier we were talking about, to be honest.
Oh no, don't say that. You'll take the listener with you. Always pretend you know exactly where you are.
Exactly what I'm
We're on
talking about.
the final one.
Yeah, that's the hierarchy of needs, the top one.
The top one.
But this one also kind of like penetrates into each of the barriers. I feel
Yeah.
like I've kind of mentioned that already, but the kind of issue of stigma, and equally the theme that's kind of been running through this whole discussion around cooperation and collaboration, and the need to do that in order to grow the industry and see it prosper and flourish.
Yeah. I mean, there is. I mean, I think we probably have talked about those three things as we've gone along, haven't we? We've talked about the deep-rooted stigma that exists societally and clinically and politically, and some of the issues there. I've just done a little rant there around like cooperation and collaboration and the need for it, and just recognizing that there are big groups trying to do similar things and not together.
Yeah.
And we again appreciated
it being a very fragmented industry, despite it not being all that old and all that big.
Yeah. So like that, I mean, our proposed solution there is for people to work together collaboratively and take hits in the short term for long term gain, and to recognize the similarity in.
Yeah. And to get on with your competitors, you know, I think healthy competition is good, and just everyone being friends
Definitely
would be nice.
And we'd love to use like the website. Obviously, we've got like an industry section of the website now, and we're going to be writing loads about the industry. We're going to do loads and loads of industry content.
So if you've got stories and narratives you want to share, and like, add a bit more nuance to the discussion and debates going on in the industry. Yeah.
Like if you're in the industry and you're trying to bring people together, and you want to use us as like a call to action for that, do it. Or you want to talk to us about an initiative or a scheme that you're trying to do to increase awareness.
We'll
use us, like use the platform, use us, come speak to us, whether it's a podcast or an article or whatever. Let's get the word out about the good work people are doing, because it does feel like it's an issue that is holding us back. Yeah,
I think it's a massive barrier that, it's quite specific to the industry, but definitely affects all of these barriers.
Yeah. You've talked about on the notes, we've got like the uniqueness of cannabis not really fitting in the mainstream medical framework.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. You've talked about clinicians.
Yeah.
Talk about nature of medical cannabis. It's difficult to engage with.
I think as well, like, I think this is a barrier and what's the opposite of it? A benefit. I was like, a positive.
I was going to be like, open door.
Is the fact that there's a lot of emotion and passion within this industry, and rightfully so, because, you know, there's been so much stigma and prohibition around cannabis. The industry naturally will have people that are committed and passionate about the issue. But I feel like sometimes things can get lost within that emotion and that passion. And I think we do sometimes need to take a step back and look at the industry from kind of a rational, reasoned lens. I don't really know what my point was there. It was more of a comment rather than
it was sensible. There's all good points.
But I've lost my train of thought.
It was sensible. I think that's like kind of our closing summary and argument, is that like there is a perpetual issue around stigma, and we think there's an interesting solution there to use the word cannabis less, explore more innovations and diversity, and make it feel more like a medical product to advance. And
just bring it into like other avenues that don't necessarily just continue to talk about cannabis, but slot it into other things. I mean, we talk about this with drug policy and like recreational cannabis generally as well, around like talking about it in a way that you don't need to continue to say the word cannabis. And we keep
saying cannabis.
We keep saying cannabis. we're not doing a very good job of, practicing what we preach. But attaching it to other areas of policy and of interest that will capture the attention of people outside of the cannabis industry and outside of, you know, a group of individuals that are interested and passionate about the issue.
Yeah.
Because obviously, the industry is small and it's filled with amazing people that are really passionate and care deeply about cannabis, but it's about getting those people that aren't passionate and don't care about cannabis to start caring about it.
Definitely. And be more, I think we as a sector need to be more like innovative as to how we get messages out there and engage the broader public. I think there is too much of a reliance on thinking about cannabis as any other product and just like, we'll just throw it in the papers, we'll just get press coverage in the papers. And we need to be we need to be, we again, our catchphrase, we talk about this a lot, but there is an evolution of how people are digesting information and the media, and there's an evolution of how politicians are engaging in subjects and how you get politicians
and how
to engage
the public
in
are engaging with politics.
And we're just, this sector is just not recognising that. It's doing the same old things, the same old lobbying techniques, the same old public relations technique, the same old marketing techniques.
And we need a unique approach to actually see change.
Definitely. A unique approach that sidesteps stigma.
Yeah. And that gets the media interested in it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like for every like positive story I see about cannabis every few months, it's like, okay, Daily Mail runs the psychosis cannabis story.
Yeah, out they come. Out they come.
It's just every few months that.
I'm convinced that's who I'm going to be debating in a few weeks at Edinburgh at that debate. I swear it's going to be Peter Richards. I keep thinking about it now. I'm just going to see his little face. Anyway.
That'll be fun, but yeah.
Have we said enough controversial stuff?
I feel like there's enough controversial content in here for a while.
You reckon? Oh, God, don't say that. Thanks for people that have engaged and listened to this. Like, we really welcome.
Like, let us know
feedback.
What you think. Whether you'd like to see more of these kinds of discussions. Whether there's a barrier that we completely missed out. Whether something we mentioned just isn't relevant or you don't agree with.
And if you're a patient, I'm gonna put this on Reddit, which is brave. But if you're a patient, like, let us know what you agree with there. Like, me and Katya and I are not patients, and like, I know I've said things that represent like patient experience. So like, really welcome patient feedback and ideas around this. And if you're a company, an organisation that wants to explore any of these themes with us,
get in
touch. Just give us a shout. Give us a shout. Ace. All right.
Cool. All right. Goodbye. How does one close a podcast?
You clap your hands.